Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel, where we bring history to life through powerful, untold stories of courage, strategy, and resilience. If you're passionate about Vietnam's history and the extraordinary people who shaped it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Today, we'll step into one of the most riveting chapters of 20th century diplomacy. The story of Nguyen Thi Binh, former vice president of Vietnam, and the woman who held her own against the world's most seasoned political heavyweights at the Paris peace talks. Act 1. The Road to Paris. It was 1968. The Vietnam War had reached its most brutal phase. Across South Vietnam, bombs fell daily, casualties mounted, and shocking news reports reached every corner of the globe. Public opposition to the war was growing, in America, in Europe, and beyond. Under mounting pressure from both the battlefield and the streets, Washington was forced to sit down at the negotiating table. Representing the Provisional Revolutionary Government of South Vietnam was a 41-year-old woman, Nguyen Thi Binh. The appointment surprised many. Here was a soft-spoken woman in a traditional white áo yoi dai about to step into a room full of generals, career diplomats, and political strategists. Before she left for Paris, she was reminded, "On the negotiating table, every word you speak could change the fate of our country. Not a single word can be wasted, and not a single one can be missing." Act 2. The Table War. Paris, winter 1968. Snow covered Avenue Kléber, but inside the conference room, the atmosphere was ice-cold with tension. From the start, the U.S. insisted on a rectangular table, a symbolic move to recognize only two parties, the United States and the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. This would effectively erase the Provisional Revolutionary Government's legitimacy. Nguyen Thi Binh smiled politely, but her tone was firm. "We represent the people of South Vietnam. Without us, there can be no real peace." The fight over the table shape dragged on for 22 days. In the end, a round table with 4 equal parties was agreed upon, a symbolic but critical first victory, forcing the U.S. to acknowledge the revolutionary forces in the South as an equal player. Act 3. Sleepless Nights and the Battle of Words. The Paris Agreement was not forged only in public sessions. Behind closed doors were hundreds of hours of intense discussions, dissecting every sentence, sometimes every single word. The U.S. wanted to use the phrase, "reduce forces." Just one small word, reduce, but it would have allowed them to keep so-called advisors in Vietnam indefinitely. Nguyen Thi Binh spotted the trap immediately. One wrong word could cost thousands of lives. We will not sign a vague document. Some sessions went on for 4 straight hours just to settle on whether to use all or part. The Americans had teams of international legal experts. She had sheer determination and clarity of purpose. Act 4. Facing Henry Kissinger. When Kissinger entered the talks, the negotiations became even more challenging. Sharp, calculating, and a master of psychological tactics, Kissinger once proposed a ceasefire, but stretched over 5 years, effectively prolonging the war. Nguyen Thi Binh looked him in the eye. "Your ceasefire is only a pause to prepare for the next war. True peace is when all foreign forces leave Vietnam and our people decide their own destiny." The room fell silent. Kissinger understood this was an opponent who would not bend. Act 5. The Moon Remark. During a press conference, an American reporter asked, half mocking, "The United States has sent men to the moon and brought them back safely. Do you believe we'll really pull out of Vietnam?" Without missing a beat, she replied, The Americans may have gone to the moon and returned safely, but coming to Vietnam, we're not so sure about that. The room erupted in laughter, but beneath it was a stinging truth, a masterstroke of diplomacy and wit. The next day, her words were printed in major newspapers around the world. Act 6. The Signing Moment. On January 27, 1973, after nearly 5 years of verbal duels, the Paris Peace Accords were signed. Nguyen Thi Binh took the pen, her hand steady, her signature clear and deliberate. The image of a Vietnamese woman in a white alloy yai surrounded by the dark suits of global politicians was immortalized in history. She knew it wasn't yet complete peace, but it was the turning point that forced the U.S. to withdraw and paved the way for reunification. International recognition. French journalist Jean-Claude Piemonte wrote, Nguyen Thi Binh proved that a woman with intellect and resolve can make even the most seasoned power players tread carefully. The New York Times observed, Nguyen Thi Binh didn't just represent Vietnam, she represented a generation of women worldwide, unafraid to confront, to negotiate, and to win. Nguyen Thi Bing's story reminds us that victory isn't always won on the battlefield. Sometimes it's won in the strength of one's words, the clarity of one's vision, and the refusal to yield. If you believe her story deserves to be heard around the world, hit like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's bring Vietnam's history to a global audience, one story at a time.